So we've reached the last main step of our disassembly process, which is going to be valves and the compression system. So what we're going to need to do for this is we're going to have a nut driver, we're going to have a ratchet, and we're going to have some different sockets. So one of the sockets we're going to need is a 1/2-inch socket, and then we're also going to need our typical 9/32 socket in order to be successful here. And then we're going to move into removing the cover over there. So to get started, we're going to want to remove our heat shield cover. So the way this is going to work is we're going to want to grab, this is going to be a metric, so you're going to want to grab a 7mm socket, and basically all you're going to do is you're going to remove the 2 screws that are present on our heat shield, okay? Oops. So as you saw here, when you remove this, you're going to want to keep the screws located on the actual cover, just because they're really small and they're going to be easy for you to lose. Okay, so once you've loosened everything up all the way, there we go. Once you've loosened everything up all the way, you're going to see that the 2 screws are in here, and you want to hold them steady. Yep, and you're going to want to put them right back into the cover, the block. So don't let them go anywhere. Okay. So I'm screwing those 2 in, okay, right where they came from. So just have both of those in there just so you don't lose them. Okay, and then you're not going to need your heat shield cover again until we reassemble, so you can put that to the side. Okay, so now we'll notice that we have our valve cover, and we're going to need to remove these 4 screws in there before we go any further. So you're going to need to use your 10 mil to get that off. So I'm going to go ahead and grab that. And what you're going to do, just like normal, kind of remove that righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. And you'll notice that there are going to be 4 of them, okay? So you're going to want to remove all 4 of these. Make sure that those washers kind of stay in place too, just so we don't lose them. And then you're going to find that this is going to reveal your two valves, okay, your intake and your exhaust valves, okay? We're not going to do anything with our valves. No adjustments need to be made or anything, but you'll notice that your engine looks kind of like this now, okay? So now what you're going to need to do is you're going to have to grab your 1/2-inch socket and your ratchet here, and you're going to want to remove the head bolts. There's 5 of them, okay? There's 1 down here in the valves, and then there's 4 on the outside. So basically all you're going to need to do is just take these off. Shouldn't take too long. Okay, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. You're also going to need to have that extension on there too. It's going to be helpful to have a partner help you out in this stage too, just because it's really tight. Oh, there we go. So you just see how much effort it takes to take one of these out. They're pretty hefty little buggers. Once it's loose enough again, as usual, you can kind of take it out with your hand. And that's how long one of these screws are. So I'm just going to cut all of these out. Okay, so finally, all 5 of these screws are out. You'll notice, or these bolts are out. You'll notice that these head bolts are all the same size, okay? You can kind of see it over there. They're all the same size. On this particular small gas engine, all 5 head bolts are the exact same, but in some small engines, they're not. So if you're taking a small engine apart at home, it's going to be important that you, if these sizes are a little bit different, you take note of where each screw or where each head bolt is going, just so you are able to reassemble it properly when the time comes. Now you're also at a place to remove the valves and the cover here. So what you're going to do is simply pull out. It's going to be pretty loose. Okay, just make sure all of your gaskets and everything are staying together. Okay. So you'll notice that our piston is present. Okay. So this piston is approaching top dead center. It's not all the way there right now, as you can see, but this is going to be our piston, and we're going to be taking that out and looking at that a little bit further here in the next part of the video. Once you've taken off your cover too, you'll notice that you're going to have these 2 rods that come out. These are called rocker arms. It's going to be important that you label those and put them in a little Ziploc baggie as well. Sorry, I forgot to mention that. One additional thing to take note of is on your piston, you'll notice that there's some letters and numbers that are engraved into there. Okay, so just kind of notice that as you are looking at your piston, the numbers should be written, the letters should be written in a way that you can read it so it's not upside down or anything. Take a picture of that just so you remember what orientation the piston goes in, so that when you're reassembling it, you know to put it in this way and not upside down. So you'll notice that it's also appropriate for us to drain our oil, which is something we didn't do in the beginning. We're going to want to do this now before we open up and look at the piston and look at all the internal parts of the engine, just because that would be pretty darn messy if we didn't take care of that right now. So you're going to need a 3/8 wrench in order to complete this step. And all you're going to do is you're going to grab a partner in here, and one of you is going to be holding the gas, or the oil container with the funnel. The other person is just simply going to grab the wrench and loosen up the end enough, and then the oil will drain out. And make sure that you hold your funnel up and your oil container up pretty close to where you're draining from, so we don't have any excess spilling. That wouldn't be good. And just have one person tilt the engine and the other person just simply hold the funnel and the oil container in place, and just keep going. There's going to be quite a bit in there, as you remember.
I think it's 28 ounces, but obviously they don't need to. You know what? I wonder if I loosen up one of these, if this would help it run faster. But it didn't seem like we got much oil out of there. Oh, we did.
It's pretty full.
It's getting there, isn't it?
Yeah, we're almost at 28, so. So you'll keep going until it's pretty much all out. There might be an occasional drip here and there. Just kind of clear it out with that funnel. Oh, there's a little bit more. And then what you'll do is you'll just have the other person kind of screw back in there. So remember, we started out with about 28 ounces of oil in your container, so you should kind of fill up that container back up to where it was originally. And as mentioned previously, you might want to think it's a good idea to put your valve cover back on the area where the valves are located. So what you'll do is just grab those 4 bolts and just simply screw them in here. You don't need to torque it or do anything special or fancy right now. You can just kind of put the 4 in there and screw them in just so they're there and so they don't get lost. Pretty easy. And then once you're done screwing these 4 in semi-tightly, you can go ahead and place that to the side. So now you're going to want to angle your engine assembly kind of so it's facing towards you, not just flat on the surface of the table, just because you might have a little bit of oil and you don't want that to like leak or drain all over you. That wouldn't be very fun. Now you'll notice that we drilled out some of these screws with the ratchet. They're really, really tight in there. So just be prepared. It's going to take you probably 10, maybe even 15 minutes to get all of these out just using a ratchet. You're going to have to use a half-inch socket to get these out. It's going to take a lot of muscle power. Like I said previously, have a buddy or your partner hold the engine block down as you take them out because you're going to have to put a lot of force and oomph into that. Take all of these out first. There we go. And once you have taken out all of your bolts, what you're going to do here is you're going to take a soft head hammer or a mallet, and you're going to just kind of give it a little tap on the side until it comes out. There you go. So it might take a couple taps and you'll just pull it out. And then you have the sunk cover effectively removed. Okay. But once we opened up our engine, we noticed that there's still a little bit of oil left in here. And that's totally okay, but what you're going to want to do, and again, the reason why we have it up at an angle is to prevent this. You're going to want to drain it out. So I'm going to hold the engine at an angle, and Mr. Lindgren is going to hold the funnel so we can catch the majority of that excess, kind of position it back up, okay? So now we have the interior of our engine. We have our camshaft, which is going to be the bigger gear that we have, and we have our crankshaft. But it's going to be a really good time for you to take a picture. It's going to be a really good time for you to take a picture of where everything is lined up. So I'm going to open up my camera and take a picture. And you'll notice here, especially because these are newer engines, the timing gears are already going to be lined up appropriately, and the timing gears need to be lined up at the appropriate spot on the crankshaft and the camshaft because that tells and communicates to the valves when they need to open and when they need to close. So you need to make sure when you're putting your engine back together here in a couple of weeks that the timing gears are lined up appropriately, and that's why we just had you snap that picture. Okay? So the first thing you're going to want to do after you've taken your picture is remove your camshaft. So the camshaft, like I mentioned, is that bigger gear that you have. So you'll remove that out. And you'll notice that 2 little valves kind of start to pluck out a little bit. Those are your tappet valves. On a newer engine like this, it's not going to really matter where they go when you put them back together. But on older engines, when some of them are a little bit worn, you want to monitor where those tappets go and which part of the engine they came from. So once you've gotten your camshaft removed, you have the inside of your engine here, and this is our crankshaft, obviously, and this is our connecting rod in here, and that's what connects our piston to the inside of our engine. Now, what you're going to want to do first here is remove your connecting rod screws or connecting rod bolts, or what they're referred to as. So you're going to need to have a 5/16 socket on your ratchet, and you'll simply just go in there and remove these screws or these bolts, okay? They're going to take a lot, and you're going to have to kind of rotate your crankshaft as needed to get these out, just to make it at a convenient location for you to access them. All you have to do is just grab onto that crankshaft, and you can get those out pretty easily. Okay. And you'll notice too, as I'm taking this out, that there's a little black bit on the edge of our crankshaft, or of our base here of our connecting rod. and this is known as an oil dipper. And the oil dipper basically grabs oil from our engine, from the inside of our engine, and brings it out and lubricates all of the moving parts of the engine while they're moving. Because we have a horizontal shaft, that means we have an oil dipper, but if it were to be a vertical, we would have what is known as an oil slinger. And both of them serve the same purpose, just different terminology, okay? So that is our oil dipper right there, now that it's removed, okay? So then basically what you'll do is you make sure all these parts are together still and put these aside for now. Before removing your piston and your connecting rod, however, you're going to want to make sure that you remove the head gasket. So basically it's pretty simple. You just take it off. It's going to look like this. Okay, these are pretty expensive, so don't bend them, don't break them, don't eat them, don't do anything with them besides remove them from the head gasket, from the head. Okay, kind of set that aside, put it in your Ziploc baggie, and what you'll do then is remove your piston. So you remove your piston, and it'll come out like this with your connecting rod on the bottom. Okay, you'll notice that there are 3 rings on your piston. The top 2 rings are your compression rings. The bottom ring is known as the oil ring. Okay, so those 3 rings are located on every piston, and the oil ring is going to be the thickest, and there will always be 2 compression rings on the top. Okay, I don't want you messing around with the rings that are on your piston, but if you would like to practice removing and adding rings, we have other pistons you can mess around with in our shop. Now comes to our last part of the engine disassembly process, is removing your crankshaft. So all you're going to do is simply hold it at an angle and pull out here, okay? So once you have that pulled out, you've concluded the disassembly process. Give yourself a pat on the back or a high five, because now you get to put it all back together. So we'll come back with some more videos, and you'll put this bad boy back together, and hopefully she runs. So good job, you finished it up.